Welcome to the Masters of Metrics podcast, helping you get more out of your digital marketing investment. This podcast is proudly hosted by DigiVisor, a platform for people who want to grow their business by taking a data-driven approach. Now here's your host, Emma Lo Russo.
So Nick, welcome to Masters of Metrics.
Thank you, Emma. It's a pleasure to be chatting to you.
I've had the pleasure of knowing you for nearly 10 years now, certainly almost all the time of DigiVisor.
Yeah.
But you've got a lot more experience in marketing, global digital marketing, visibility across all sorts of countries and objectives and industries. So let's start with some recent history and we'll go back from there. So tell us where you are and how you got there.
Well, I'm sitting here in Singapore, and the interesting thing is, in Singapore, how sort of data-driven and connected the whole country is. It's been an amazing 12 months, hasn't it, with COVID, working from home. But up here, it's been pretty painless. Everyone has fiber to the home, 95% of the population. Everywhere you go, your temperature screened. It's mandatory. Everywhere you go is QR code and government app tracked. And so tracing here has been pretty easy, and it's been brilliantly managed. So I think though they had a large number of cases, there was only one wave and it's faded. So because this country is so interconnected, it's the first country into recession with the pandemic, and it's been the first one out. But coming back to Singapore from Australia just recently, it's a bit like living in this dystopian future, because there's a robot dog in my local park made by Boston Dynamics, and it's got a loudspeaker attached to it, and it tells you to socially distance, and if you don't, it then gets taken over by a human. So it's not quite a Black Mirror episode, but it's getting close.
Amazing. I mean, and it's the infrastructure that helps there also in Singapore, which we'd love here in Australia, of course. But let's talk about your career. So how can you unlock it in the best way possible? And then we might talk about the highlights and the impacts that you feel you've had as well.
From a recent graduate, I started out in market research as an analyst in a tech company called Sabre. And I've always worked in tech actually my whole career. But it gave me this really strong belief in listening to customers, and understanding their needs. And I think that's really helped me over the years, because, as a marketer now, you need to be pretty good at numbers and data and stats. And that's a modern day marketer, but that wasn't really planned. I was kind of lucky. I moved from Sabre to a company called Gateway in the PC business as a business analyst. And I don't know if you remember them, but they shipped those PCs in the black and white sort of cow spotted boxes. And anyway, I had to analyze all the customer data of all the people in the call center and coming into the call center, all the calls, as customers rang up to build to order their computers. And then we also launched a website and carts on the website. So that actually was a very iterative process. And because Gateway sold directly to end user consumers, we put that information to use and changed our ads in the TV and in print and in online every day. But I was fortunate, I wasn't there that long. I got poached by a more successful company called Dell just before year 2000. And like Gateway, they sold directly to end users, but they were growing really fast like Gateway. They had already segmented the market and they focused on the commercial business end of town. And because of that, they were a lot more profitable. So while Gateway sold one PC per phone call, Dell could sell 50. And my job was sort of as a RAD analyst, and I'll explain what RAD means in a sec, but I had to build a database of every company in Australia with more than 100 employees. And we mapped in what they were buying, and we basically mapped and worked out their potential, what we probably would call lifetime value nowadays, and mapped and worked out the share of wallet per customer. So, this is where the term sort of RAD came from. It was sort of retention, development, acquisition, talking about the customer. And this was how we segmented the market and identified high value accounts to win and what sales and marketing we should, invest to win them. So this all for me started living in giant Excel spreadsheet, but it turned into something online via everyone's browser, really an early day CRM, contact manager, customer analysis tool. And Dell used this all across Asia. And it took about 10 years to be replaced by Salesforce. So I had moved in Dell by this time to run marketing, and I was using this tool to basically automate my marketing. What we use today, Pardot, or someone may use Eloqua that's listening, but it's based on customer behavior. And so this was, early 2000s, but analyzing sort of RFM, recency, frequency, monetary, when customers are buying, how much, how often, what the dollar spend is. And so I just stayed there for 10 years. It was the best place that I had ever worked, with all these smart people around. So I was like a sponge, learn how to run a business. And it was a great place to learn sort of data-driven decision making. And that was something that Michael Dell always said, and I always said, guys, data is a weapon. Without data, it's a feeling. So RFM worked, and lifetime value worked, and share of wallet and segmentation. All these things I think we take for granted now. 20 years ago, we're a lot more innovative. We're a lot more cutting edge. But I ended up leaving Dell and I went to Apple, and I moved into sales because marketing makes a lot less money than sales. And I had great timing because I was running retail for consumer nationally as a national sales manager, and the iPod had just arrived. So I spent a few years signing up all the telcos and retailers, and Apple business boomed. It just went ballistic as Aussies reconnected with the Apple brand, and they had breakthrough product. I mean, for me, this taught me the power of a brand, and an old brand can be refreshed and cool again when you have great products. It can be inspiring if you attach emotional marketing to it and appeal to the next generation of buyers. By the late 2000s, I really wanted to get back into marketing, and I moved to Asia, lived in China and in Singapore, and just the enormous scale of China with a huge growth really attracted me. And I moved to a company called Lenovo, who had just bought the IBM PC business, and ultimately stayed there for 12 years and ended up becoming the CMO for Asia Pacific, and then globally running their digital marketing business.
Pretty impressive, Nick. I didn't realize actually you started as a business analyst, so no wonder you've been so data driven as a CMO that I've had the good fortune to see you use data as a weapon. Lenovo, and they're all great brands. I don't think anyone from Gateway on wouldn't recognize the great brands you've worked for and led. Massive change for Lenovo, right? No one knew Lenovo. I think they had 0% brand awareness here in Australia when you were given the task of kicking off. How did you go about creating that brand awareness and going to market, and how long did it take those changes to implement to get to measurable outcome?
The thing that I recognized, was just in Australia and most of the world, just the way customers and consumers shopped and bought products. Just with the explosion in digital media mindshare and social media influence, it's radically changed. So in the last 10 years, it's gone from a small influence to basically the number one way and the fastest way you can attract new customers and launch and build a brand. You've got all sorts of brands around the world that are household names, but you've never seen them before. It's all word of mouth, and everybody's buzzing and talking about it. I mean, it was Uber and Airbnb and these big brands, and you don't see them on TV, right? That's not the way they build their brand. Unless you as a consumer really engage with a brand, it's not relevant to you, but you can build at speed with digital and social. So Lenovo in Australia, as you worked with us, we wanted to launch into the consumer market. We were totally absent. Apple, HP, and some could outspend us 10 or 20 or 100 to 1. So we didn't put all of our media across lots of different types. We just focused almost 80, 90% in digital and social. And working with DigiVisor, created grassroots influencers to grow real engagement in social with user-generated content. And this buzz just amplified, and we launched a breakthrough product called Yoga, a convertible PC. And we were really fortunate because we worked with you guys, and we had Ashton Kutcher developing the products, and he was well liked in Australia, so he was the face of the campaign. But the whole idea was do this and do it fast. And the result, was went from nowhere to number 2 in share of voice in digital in about a year. In a year, yoga became synonymous with the convertible PC. And in 2 years, we were a household name. We had brand recognition in 70% of households. And last year, we was the number 2 selling PC brand in Australia in the consumer market. And that all wouldn't have happened. It may have taken 10 years in traditional, but it took like 18, 24 months. And that's the big change. The big change is digital and social, and the speed at which it happens, especially when you have a wow product and that's relevant to that market, that's really engaged.
I mean, you saw at Dell that data was the weapon. Would you say that was kind of one of the weapons you had at Lenovo?
Absolutely. I mean, what we did with you guys was make sure that we were really focused on targeting, the people that really generate trends, which were we called them millennials, and everyone's been talking about them for years now. But at the time, we were like, let's go for this young youth market because they're the ones driving trends in tech and in fashion and design. It's not people like me in their 40s or older, it's the youth market. So let's capture that market. They can't afford to buy Apple. They want it, but we have something better, and we'll be engaged with them in the place they are, which is online. So targeting that youth market, targeting them through those channels made a hell of a lot more sense. And it was really the reason for success out of the blocks.
And I don't think I've ever asked you this, Nick, but how did you go selling that strategy back to Lenovo? Because it wasn't a global kind of strategy at the time.
It was the only thing I thought could work. It was the only real shot that we had. And the funny thing was Lenovo had already tried twice to launch in Australia in consumer, and it had failed both times. And people internally were very skeptical. So it had to be a unique, different way of operating and launching, not just a normal traditional approach. And to sell that internally, I had to go to my boss of Asia Pacific, go to his boss who ran half the world, and then go to the CEO. So you end up going to Beijing and pitching this. And then he's like, I'll give you some money and I want you to succeed in this. And everybody just ran so hard for 2.5 years to make it happen. And it really worked. It was a lot of fun.
Even though I wasn't expecting you, thank you for mentioning DigiVisor, but it was a lot of fun. And I think your passion really drove it because it was an opportunity, right? And I think the other bit, not just the insights, was the hyper focus on a market, like a target market, like win somewhere and win hard, do everything you can to win big. So that's interesting. When you reflect now, because you've been at Hitachi for 2 years, what lessons do you take from your time at Lenovo to Hitachi? And then how are you taking a brand that's been around since 1910, maybe not known for being very digital itself, like you've come in at another opportunity to lead the way. But what lessons and how are you finding that? Talk to me about the last 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny, and I'm laughing as you ask the question. I mean, I've learned most companies are not like Gateway, Dell, Apple, and Lenovo. They're not in IT. They aren't cutting edge. They're not leading the way. They're behind the curve. I mean, it's got to be like that. Someone's ahead, some people are behind. But particularly in the industrial sector, what I've learned is most of the industrial behemoth companies are well behind. They're digital laggards, and they're typically full of older men who are generally resistant to change. What's really positive in Hitachi is actually they're a very progressive, forward-looking company, and they've managed to stay around this long just because of their innovation and drive and continuous improvement. Kaizen in Japan is a term for continuous improvement. They really take that to heart. But what's amazing is that they recognize the necessity to digitally transform the business, to change and thrive. They're hungry, and they've actually gone out of their industry and look to bring in experts, learn best practice to implement, and bring these outsiders like me from different industries, welcome them. We know what looks good, how to go about it, and then they've empowered us to create a team that can actually deliver on that change. So that ultimately always has to, I think, start with a great CEO and who wants that. and have their buy-in and get their support on a change agenda. And as a CMO, I think you've got to have that to be successful. So, I mean, for me, that's been a really nice change. And that's actually the reason I took the job. I wouldn't have done it if they were not willing to change.
Well, they would have checked you out, Nick. So they were obviously innovating by hiring you, bringing your viewpoint and your passion and your energy and strategies to play. They probably didn't realise how fortuitous it was, because obviously COVID hit. You deal with enterprise, SMB, consumer. So what has it been like navigating this particular period? Has that accelerated some of the conversations, helped you implement your agenda? What have you observed? And is it different for your customers too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, if you look at marketing just in itself, marketing as a profession has sort of evolved so much faster than maybe other business functions. I mean, how much has really changed in accounting or legal in 20 years? But in marketing, everything's changed. The data, the tools, the skills, the platforms, the way people are shopping and buying and communicating. But with COVID, it's just accelerated that and meant it's even more important. So, we're taking what should be a multi-year journey, and we're sort of crushing it down to try and do it as fast as we can. And I think, like many companies, 5 years of change or 4 years of change has happened in a 1 year of change. But I think also because they've let me build my own team, it's a diverse team, it's a young age group. We're in 20 different cities around the world operating virtually. We're one of the most productive and dynamic teams internally, and that diversity, I think, helps in terms of output and workload and the willingness to change. So when I joined, though, we had no consistent brand web or social experience. Every country could do what they wanted. Even though people might have known Hitachi, it looked different everywhere in the world. And it's a giant company. I mean, it makes high-speed Shinkansen trains, but it also makes small consumer appliances. So my goal has just been to lift brand consideration for our industry products, which is air conditioning products, and just reposition the brand as a premium Japanese brand for cooling and heating technology. And the reason that is because consumers and businesses only buy our product every 10 or 15 years. So we have to be very, very targeted. Otherwise, we're just wasting money. So, I mean, similarly to the story in Lenovo, we were spending all of our money elsewhere, print and TV, and couldn't really track it. And it's all focused on awareness. And it never actually drove any business. And it didn't drive consideration either. So we basically said, we're going to rebuild all of our website, have one standard brand globally, have one standard web experience in every country in the world in different languages, and really look at the visits to the web, leads from the web, and new pipeline that comes from that. And those three metrics are really what driving us every day. And this meant starting from scratch, like have one global domain, hitachieaircon.com, instead of having, 20, having the website, a best of breed experience, but having it in local languages everywhere, having it change depending on whether you're a consumer, a professional, or a business buyer, and really, ramp up the online experience, because we were getting 10,000 people a quarter, and now we're getting 500,000 people. We were getting hundreds of marketing qualified leads per quarter, and now we're getting 6,000-7,000, and that's really turning into pipeline in Salesforce. So that's why I was saying, it's visitors, then it's leads, and then it's pipeline, because pipeline can be measured and then turned into revenue. And ultimately, I think that's what marketers are here to do. They're here to drive the business and be accountable for that. And with COVID, it makes it even more important than ever before.
I mean, they're impressive results already in such a short time, because you would have gone from nothing to what you had to what you did need, and we're still talking under 2 years, and you're pulling out that kind of difference in numbers.
It's when you start from scratch, Emma. When you start from very low base, anything looks good. I mean, we used to get 1 million people a day visit Lenovo.com, so we're a long way to go to that sort of scale, but it's a very different type of business too. So.
But I mean, the fact that you know what is driving outcome allows you to level up where you need to drive more of that outcome. When you look at your total funnel, like what's driving, that initial traffic, consideration, conversion, referral, nurture, what do you think is important, or how are you viewing that? What drives that for you? Like, how do you as the CMO look at that?
Yeah, we've created this phenomenal Hitachi cooling and heating web analytics dashboard, and it's taken us only maybe 2 months to build, and it's leveraging Google Data Studio, Tag Manager, Google Search, and Analytics, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, and basically it's turned everything into a very easy to read, easy to share dashboard. And we actually have a physical funnel, on it, and it shows step by step what's happening, how many sessions, the users, what's the bounce rate, what's the dwell time, what pages are visited, and then, okay, so what are new contacts, which are revisitors, which are actually turning into marketing leads, how many new contacts have we made, how many leads were passed to partners and directed to showrooms, and then what things have been downloaded and who's opted in for communications. So we've actually designed it that simply and visually to make sure people understand what's driving things. What's really interesting, we know it's working because of pipeline and then the conversion of that and the link to Salesforce that we've made. But, the Turkish country general manager actually the other day remarked how much new business he's getting and, new leads they're getting. And he's basically attributed it back to the website. And for a sales guy to actually, point to marketing going, that's working, well done, guys. That's a big deal, because usually they don't do that. And, I've been in sales, you take the credit for yourself. So
that's right, because it's all about the bonus, right?
Yeah. But making it visual, making it easy, making it a dashboard, making it graphical, it just turns everything from, I don't know, something virtual to something you can see, and everyone can interact with it and interrogate it and deep dive. So we've trained all the executives on this, and as they're bringing it into their sort of weekly reviews, which is something that, they have never done before.
And I think, the beauty in that, if they're actually able to interact and do that investigation, is that it sets you up to be able to run tests too. Like what lever do you want to invest in, and does it actually drive whatever outcome by a factor that you hope for?
Exactly.
So the website, you've created these personal experiences for enterprise, SMB, consumer when they hit the site. What feeds that traffic to site? Is it different? What platforms are you using, say, for enterprise? It might be different for SMB, that might be different to consumer. And is that different even in a global sense? Each country has a different viewpoint. How are you driving the ultimate destination to capture that data?
Yeah, honestly, it's relatively new for us. We haven't had a website that really is being able to clearly segment, 3 different target groups of customers and those different market segments. So the way that we're doing that today is really just through watching and learning the behavior of those users. So we know they're a professional because they go to the professional area of the website and they spend the most time there. Then we've captured them and gone, okay, we'll cookie you. We know you're now a professional, we most likely. And then we'll be targeting you when you go and, maybe visit LinkedIn. As opposed to, if they were a consumer, targeting them through maybe, Instagram. Or when we look at using Pardot and we're going to send targeted emails to people, we're going to be very different in terms of the message we give to those different groups. So, really it's not about getting people to the website and we know exactly who they are. It's having them visit and revisit, and each time capturing a little bit more information, learning from their behavior, and then making a decision about, well, what type of customer are they? And very quickly, when they visit the next time, if they were a professional, they'll be in the professional area of the website. So it's relevant to them. And if they don't bounce out and they stay and they read lots of products and they download and they opt in, that for us means we were right. If they quickly bounced out and went somewhere else, then maybe we were wrong. So that's the way we're working. It's iterative and it's on the fly, really.
And it sounds like your analytics framework is quite powerful to give you that insight as to the journey as well. Where are they when they're on site, to know, to profile them?
Yeah, exactly.
So how important is this insight? Is it the outcome that you're getting from the platform and insights, or is it the insights that you use to get the buy-in across your organization? Like, where should someone start? Like, is it strategy first to get that investment, or is it outcome? Like, have you balanced that at Hitachi and previously?
I'm pretty simple person. I ultimately believe marketing is really to do two things. It's got to contribute to the business, and it's got to be a measurable success and that means revenue and profit, and that's short term. So, especially with COVID, marketers have to be super responsible for the money that they're spending and showing what's they're actually delivering. So we were really struggling because when I joined, leads, pipeline, and revenue and margin attribution just couldn't be done. We really had to start with the basics and start measuring and trying to manage and make a case for building infrastructure, building MarTech, laying the foundation. Otherwise, we would just continue to spend money. And, if business was not so good, money could be taken away. And I couldn't say, what will be the business impact? Now we're in the position where we can say what the business impact is. And the return on the investment is really huge. So actually the CEO's giving me more money. So I don't know. I mean, it's a chicken and egg question really, but I think you have to, a lot of companies don't have much and you have to get to the point where there's data to convince people and get that buy-in. I think the other thing marketers really have to do, Emma, they are the only real custodians of the brand. So, salespeople are just going to sell. I've been in sales, sell what's cheap, sell what's easy. But, as a marketer, you're really have to think longer term, 5, 10 or more years. You need to be, you're the only team that really ensuring that happens. And so tracking the brand awareness, consideration, and preference. And increasingly, marketers must be using data from the customer, the voice of the customer, such metrics like NPS, Net Promoter Score, because without that, it can be a very slippery slope, I think, for some companies, and they just become coin operated and the brand gets maybe bastardized. So I think really you've got to do a balance of the two.
I mean, I love, you just said that anyone can start, right? You pointed out not every company has the resources. They can be small. I heard accountability in the way that you talked there, right? You've got the custodian of the brand, but this connection to it must be measurable and it must deliver results, right?
Yeah.
Revenue and profit. And then once you're successful, which it sounds like it's been the story of your career, including at Hitachi, then you get more money anyhow. So it works as
it's like that Amazon flywheel. You got to start it moving, right? Then it, you just have to spin it along a bit more. A lot of businesses, they go, what do I do to start, digital marketing or analytics? I think people don't realize you can start so small. Google's a great place to start. They have online learning, grow with Google. There's accreditation that goes along with it. We've used a company called Circus Street for if you've got an established team of people and they need to learn digital and gain confidence. It's but it's also affordable at scale. It's most important to jump in. People are scared of social media in many businesses. You just have to take the plunge. You jump in, learn by doing, engage. I mean, it's called social media for a reason, right? It's social, so get in there and try. But it's also so easy now. Everyone can get on Wix and Shopify and build a website and read on SEO and learn how to use search and build a business, within weeks, and start it from home. The barriers to entry now are so low. And that's why we've seen all these new brands boom just by word of mouth and doing things differently in digital and social.
I sing from the same songbook. Nick, I couldn't agree more. And I think, the point of social also gives you that view into the customer. And you talked about that. If you don't know your customer or you're not listening to that voice of customer, you're really missing out, because in the end, that's the ultimate measure, because they're the ones that have changed the most in time.
Yeah.
So just, given the career in marketing and, I'm a similar age, the 4 Ps they used to talk about in marketing, product, price, promotion, place. It's 2021. What do you think marketers need to be thinking about? What are the levers? How do you kind of look at marketing today?
I mean, we and in Lenovo, we just 4 Ps was everything. And it was really funny because for first, when I first joined, I'm like, how come we never talk about the P, the promotion, the marketing? And so, the same thing, that changed over time, but the same things happen in Hitachi. I think it's just because those two companies have been so product focused. And I was like, we're spending 80% of our time not talking about the 4 Ps, but 1 P, product, right? And that's a lot of engineering companies and product focused companies may be that way. So I think 4P is actually still relevant, but I think it's no surprise as a CMO or in any leadership position, you can't be successful without a good team. So the 5th P is people. And, you've got to take them on a journey with you. Emma, I know you do that leading the team at DigiVisor. I mean, I do the same. You've got to have a team that's aligned. Otherwise, you can't be successful. And because I think marketing has changed so much as a profession, you have to reskill, you have to sharpen the saw and just continuous learning. So the 5th P is, in my view, is people. The 4P is very basic. I've added one and I'm not originally added it. I know someone else added that before a long time ago. So, I think people is the 5th one for me.
Well, seeing firsthand how much your team love you and still love you and followed you from previous organisations and would work with you again in a heartbeat, I know that to be very, very true.
You got to have a bit of fun. I think with people, it's easy. You've got to get paid. And I say this to all of my team and everyone knows me for it. It's like, you've got to get paid. You've got to make a difference. You've got to grow and learn. You've got to like the people. And the 5th one is you've got to have some fun. And if you can't have fun in marketing, I mean, you're in the wrong profession. You're in the wrong game. So I always say, tell me how you're doing out of 5, those 5 things, because, if you're a 2.5, it's time to find another job in another company. If you're a 3.5, maybe you're okay. I'd rather you're up at about a 4 out of 5. They're not binary, 0 or 1, but if you've got a problem with a person and they're being underpaid significantly compared to the person next to them and they know it, that's a pain point, and you've got to, as a leader, take that away. So people, that's how I manage people, just on that 5-point scale.
I was going to say, if they're not having fun, they need to work with you, Nick. You definitely also cover that one off. Before we jump into our rapid fire, talk to me about the Air is Life campaign. I think it's been one of the first campaigns that you launched at Hitachi. I saw it actually won an award or something. I saw it anyhow. It was being already promoted and shared, so it hit a point. Talk to me about it, and are you happy with how it's going?
Yeah, I mean, it's purely a campaign to drive brand consideration. We take for granted air that we breathe. I think with COVID, people are realizing air is life, air is important, especially if your air in your house or your business is not safe or being filtered or cleaned. And Hitachi really is a leader in indoor air quality. This is actually very timely and relevant. So we use that hashtag Air is Life, and we call it that campaign. But it's sort of a campaign really only focused on digital and social. As I said, our countries typically spent most of their budget offline in traditional media. So what we've done is we've encouraged them by offering a matching rate. We'll give you $1 if you match it with your own dollar and you put it into digital and social. And you use a global campaign, and we have global landing experience. And it's meant that I don't run an autocracy. I have to get regions and countries to buy in. And what's been very exciting is that spending millions of dollars on this campaign around the world, and people are seeing us for the first time. So that's exciting. But, I think, just to offer something else, Emma, I think also as a marketer, it's really great to have 5 or 10% of your budget to try new things, always on the side. I mean, our products are technical, and we've got to talk to a technician in the field audience as well. So we just did something cheap recently, a YouTube campaign called The Solvers in Spain. And it was all about a pain point, which is error codes for these technicians on our products. So it sounds pretty boring, but what surprised us, in 3 months, we had like 140,000 views, and we didn't do a lot of paid promotion. It was really word of mouth. But at the end of it, we offered, and this is during COVID, use our free e-learning portal. So what was really interesting is, we had all these views, but, in Spain, we had 350 people register, and then about 100 did the free e-learning modules. And then we just recently won 2 new customers to sell our equipment. They're resellers and distributors. And that's part of growing our channel, because they represent us. And, they've already spent about 100 grand, and there's about 150 grand in pipeline. Now, it's not a lot of money, but for me, this will pay for this campaign 10 times over. And this was just a test in Spain. So now we're taking it to other parts of the world. So, I think as marketers, it's great to say, we'll do a big brand campaign, millions of dollars, but, you can also have fun and do things in an innovative way with small little bit of a budget. So I always recommend, having a little bit up your sleeve to do things like that, just on the side.
I mean, you can't ask people to be innovative if you don't actually empower them to, and part of it is budget to make that possible. So I love that point. Conscious of time, we're going to hit the rapid fire questions. All right. So what's your guilty pleasure?
Well, my pleasure is playing tennis. If I could play tennis every day, that would be a pleasure. But a guilty pleasure would be playing it during office hours.
Hang on, it's so hot in Singapore. How do you manage that?
You got to be fit. You got to be fit.
I'm doing tennis coaching every Monday night, Nick. So when you're back in Australia, I'll play a game. Or when I'm in Singapore,
have a game.
It'll smash me. What brand inspires you and why? Or brands?
As a kid, I just loved cars, and for me, the best car's always been a Porsche, and I just love driving. So that car and that brand inspires me, and seeing the brand go from strength to strength is awesome. More recently, I found a platform called Etsy, E-T-S-Y. I think you probably heard of them, but they do bespoke gifts and crafts and products and things you can't really buy on the other marketplaces. So I really like them. I think they're doing some great stuff. And recently the stock price has gone up and I'm a shareholder. So, I'll give you
picking the right platform or brand again. No, Etsy is amazing. And actually they've done very well getting that consumer being both the person that buys from these amazing artists or craftsmen or, artisans on those platforms as well. It's really built a great community.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Peter Pan, if you could pick an age that you could stay for the rest of your life, what age would that be and why?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm 46 now, and I'd probably say now. I'm pretty realistic. I would say I'm the healthiest, I've been the wealthiest and the wisest, but I would say that whether I was 5 or 10 or 50 or whatever, I mean, for me, life's just a continuous journey. So, honestly, for me, the best time is now, and if you ask me that next year, it'll be 46, 47 and 48, and 49 each year. It's just now. I don't want to stay a particular age except for the one I am.
That's a great attitude to have. Nick, that's all we've got time for today. It's always an enjoyable experience. I love chatting to you. I always learn something new. There was so much gold in the insights and tips for people and actually unlocking some of those exciting brands that you've worked for. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Emma.
Thank you. This podcast is hosted by Digivisor and I'm Emma Lo Russo. Bye for now.